In this session, I want to talk a little bit about lowering the cost of owning a serverless solution with Serverless360. I guess, just to preamble that, about 6 months ago, Saravana and I have been friends for donkey's years. So Saravana came to me and asked, because the company's been grown so big, can I help him a little bit with Serverless360? And for a few months now, I've been acting as a kind of a proxy product owner for for Serverless360. So I've been working with Aaron and the team and Saravana and everybody, working on like what kind of things do we need on the backlog to make this into a really great product. And to be fair, I came up with a backlog that I thought was really aggressive, had lots of really good things in, and the team absolutely smashed it. Delivered most of that backlog, even though I thought there was a lot more than they would be able to. And that was all targeted at a release for Integrate, which you've seen a little bit of today. I'm going to show you a little bit more of it. And I think we're kind of getting, so the real world experience I've been bringing with serverless solutions to the product, I'm seeing something I'm really liking, my customers are really liking, and I think it's going to be something everybody else will as well. And I think there's a definite gap for this. So what I want to do is just talk a little bit about it, and then really focus more on the BAM bit. So I think Saravana touched on this earlier in the week, and we wanted to just talk a little bit more about it because people were getting quite excited about that BAM bit. So just to set the scene, I mentioned earlier I do a lot of freelance and I go around spending time with lots of different customers, and there's some themes in what I hear people say at customers. So I hear things like, we've got the CTO here says, I can't find enough good people with experience on Azure. I've heard that in every country I've been to at user groups. I've heard that at every customer I've been to. It's one of the biggest challenges. I also hear when we have teams that have Azure experience and have people on them, the problem is that they're maxed out because it's difficult to support these solutions and they can't offload the support to kind of lower skilled, like second and third line support teams, because they don't have the experience and the knowledge of Azure. So that affects the project, where the project's doing less business value focused work and more support work. And I think that's something that, we used to see that in BizTalk as well a little bit. And it's frustrating if you're working on the team where you're wanting to do cool stuff on Azure, where you keep getting bombarded with support requests that you can't really get rid of them. And likewise, I also hear people in the support area talking about the lack of training that people in companies have been doing, the difficulty in learning and picking up these technologies. So I'd argue that there's a big case for how do we democratize the support experience so that the high value, very experienced Azure people are doing business value driven tasks, not mundane support. And how do we make it so that the people who do normal day-to-day support on all of your applications can do stuff on Azure, and it's not something that they're frightened to touch and they don't understand. So if we start thinking about that as a sort of desired end game, let's first think about who does what when it comes to support on Azure. So some of the things here I've taken from a white paper that I wrote a little while ago that's on TechNet Wiki. And if we think first off, what is it that Microsoft do? So we're purchasing services on Azure, and we've offloaded some of the maintenance and management to Microsoft. So Microsoft look at these different products, they look at things like service buses, logic apps, functions, and they make sure that they're running and they're functioning, and their job's to make sure that all of us can build and develop logic apps and that they work. Now, that they work doesn't necessarily mean they solve your business problem. It just means that the logic app itself is able to do something. If I think about my organization, so coming away from Microsoft, in my organization, if I'm lucky, I might have somebody who's a cloud admin or an Azure admin who, they look kind of across the platform of what you've built, and they're looking at the different resources and they're kind of saying, are my service buses working? Are my logic apps available? And that kind of thing. And they might use tools. So I've highlighted a couple of tools there like Azure Advisor, Security Center, Azure Monitor and things like that. And this is a role that maybe isn't as familiar to a lot of companies, but I think the easiest way to think about it is if you think about a DBA, which most companies would be used to, your DBA is really focused on, is my SQL cluster running? are the databases available and can be accessed by the applications. He doesn't really care if one application suddenly has got a bad query that only affects that app. He's really more interested in the platform and the cluster itself and that kind of service level. So that gives us a bit of a gap here where, the reality is when the business contact the help desk, they go, we've got a problem, something's not working. The help desk kind of go, well, it's a cloud problem. Sorry, we can't help you. We don't know anything about the cloud. And what happens is they end up offloading. So, often sometimes quite simple support tickets end up going to the dev teams and the DevOps teams and kind of bypassing where they could, for other applications, they can be picked up quite easily. And that means that these high value resources are again picking up these tasks that are, the non-planned tasks for your sprints, and they're kind of low value, and people don't enjoy doing them if you're a developer. So if you think about the reality of the support process, what I'd argue is that the higher up the chain you go, so you go from second line, first line support, maybe to a DevOps team, to a dev team, and then an architecture team, the higher a support ticket goes up that chain, the more it costs to fix it. So, if you end up right up with your architecture team, you've got a problem where you've got to rebuild the design of the app. That's going to be very expensive. If you've got, a dev who's, going in and looking at a service bus to find a message, that's going to be really expensive. So the more we can have tasks done to the left of the diagram, the lower the cost of ownership of the solution is going to be. Now, just chucking a couple of figures out the air, I'd argue that at the minute, for Azure solutions, the customers I've seen, maybe only 5% of tickets actually get dealt with if it's a cloud thing at the first point of contact from the customer to your support organization. Most of them tend to get done by the agile dev teams as part of unplanned tasks in sprints. What we should be doing is, I think as an aim, we should be looking at minimum 50% should be done at that first point of contact, especially if they're, if it's like Azure's just blown up or something, that's different. But if it's just, where's my order? This one, I think one of the slides of the day brought the thing up of where's my message, which is the classic BizTalk one. That shouldn't be going to the dev team. That should be done first line. So that gives us something to aim for, something to get to where we've offloaded support, that front, first and second line support. That's where the sweet spot of lowering the cost of ownership is. Now, how do we get there? Well, if we're in a serverless world, the solutions that we're building are a little bit different to what we've done in the past. So we talked, during the week a few times about how, BizTalk solutions in the past tend to be platform-based and they're very complicated. But we're seeing this new world of cloud-based composite application solutions where there's kind of a bit of a box and it's got some services in it, and they work together and they solve a business problem. So actually, if you just understand this box, then you can kind of manage that solution a little bit. And I'd probably argue, maybe what we want to aim at is if the support teams can understand 10% of the technology and 90% of the business domain, that's probably enough to make a real big difference in the overall, way we're handling support. So when we think of the composite application, if we start thinking about Serverless360 now, what we're really trying to do is say, the diagram from before where we had our Azure admin / DBA guy looking across the platform, we're composing a composite application in Serverless360 where we're bringing resources in from different parts of Azure and saying this queue plus this logic app and this, this database, these work together and they're a business solution. Once you've got that business solution, it becomes significantly easier to explain to somebody what it is. Things like Tom talked about root cause analysis. If you've got a domain like that, it becomes easier to identify, what are the common issues you get, what are the common root cause analysis for those type of issues. And you just start making it easier by making smaller solutions. So recapping where we are so far, what I'm saying is that there's really two ways of looking at it. We've got the Azure admin who's horizontally looking across the platform. We want the support team to be vertically looking down the platform at what things make a business solution. And that's the bit where we're kind of not quite there yet, I think, with how we, the maturity of how we manage solutions on the cloud. So with that in mind, let's look at three ways Serverless360 is going to help my support team. So I go to customers and one of the first things I hear is my CTO says, I don't understand what we have in Azure. Nino's going to be talking later about some stuff, and I know that was one of the first things Nino's boss said to him when he first started working with them. So, I know I'm not the only one who's hearing this message. I don't understand what I've got in Azure, and I might have loads of resources in there. We might be spinning stuff up all the time that people aren't really aware of because the developers are quite empowered to create resources. And then we've got the support guys who don't necessarily understand the technologies that we're spinning up. So the first way Serverless 360 helps is we saw the composite application and the tree view model that we built to be able to position these. Now, I think the tree view model is a really significant feature because what it lets me do is define a structure of where things fit. So for the unicorn business, I defined, this is my organization, this is my departments, these apps belong to these departments. And I think that would fit as a model perfectly in most of the customers that I've worked with. And straight away, someone comes along and says, oh, we've got this problem with this, and it might be related to products or marketing or whatever. You kind of already know where you're going to look at which app, and it becomes very familiar for somebody who's not an Azure expert to start working out where things fit. And one of the things we've been talking about this week as well is that maybe you're not an end customer and you're a consultancy managing multiple customers. So maybe you have your Serverless 360 where you've got nodes for each customer and you're managing small solutions for them in there. That could be another way you could use this. So that's the first thing that I think helps. Next up, we've got CTOs now saying, I've got thousands of resources in Azure. I don't really understand how they work together to solve a problem. The support team, they try to figure out how these things are, are they broken, are they working, how do I troubleshoot them? And the next thing we've done is we've put the service map / topology diagram into Serverless 360. So Saravana did a good job of demoing this the other day, and it kind of basically says, in my composite app, these are my key resources. Here's kind of how they look together. And we've got the red, amber, green sort of symbols indicating if any of them are having problems. And really at this point, you've got to note that the type of problems they're highlighting, usually they're going to be, is this service available? Is it performing the job it should perform? Has it got downtime? Has it broken a threshold? Something like that. It's really a kind of almost like an SLA type of thing that we're looking at this point. Now, we viewed that as being a really significant investment, and I think this is something we'll put a lot more into in future releases about things like try to auto-generate diagrams. We want to put more shapes in so you can, something really rich. I mean, my vision for this is something a bit like Sandro's Visio stencil, where we've got all these shapes you can just build in and all the diagrams that Saravana was shown in the slides that people have done in the community, you should be able to just do the diagram in here. So that really addresses the challenge about how things work together. And I think, if you think about, you're not the person who's day-to-day looking at that solution. You might go in, you might be supporting SAP in the morning, CRM in the afternoon, some SQL problem later, and you come to a composite app you haven't looked at for 6 weeks. The first thing that your support person's thinking is, where does it fit? How does it work again? What does it do? So you go to the diagram. We've got links in the composite app, so you can put links to your documentation if you wanted to. So it's all about making it easy for the support person to find the info to help them troubleshoot. So next up, we see the "Where's my message" scenario, which I think there's also a paper about this actually in the atomic scope world, and it's probably the most common thing we face, which is, where's my order, where's my product update, where's my, where's my message is basically what it boils down to. And the delivery team have no capacity for chasing all these individual orders. There might be hundreds of them are having problems. And you can very easily lose a couple of days out of your sprint troubleshooting these issues if you can't get the support team to be doing what you really want them doing. But at the same time, the problem in the support team is, at the minute, without a good bit of experience and some tooling, it's very difficult for them to troubleshoot that. Is the message on service bus? Did it get through the API gateway? Which of the logic apps had an error? There might be 3 or 4 logic apps work together, so did it go through the first one? is there a loop or a branch that maybe affected the flow? So we want to be able to visualize where things are and, get to the hot spot of where the problem is quickly. And then it may be a quick fix. It may still need escalating, but at least you've worked out where the problem is. That's really, where the value is here. So our solution to help with that is business activity monitoring. So if we take a little bit of a look at how we got to business activity monitoring. So for anybody who's been tracking, BizTalk 360 as a company for a while, you'll know about a product we have called Atomic Scope. So Atomic Scope was really, it was our ancestors saying, look, BizTalk's BAM is a bit stale. It does a job, but people don't really like using it anymore because it looks like shit. It's got a portal that's 10 years old. It's not that easy to use, and we felt we could kind of build a better experience for it. But also we recognise that that it's not just about BizTalk anymore. People are building hybrid solutions. So with Atomic Scope, you can plug BizTalk in a number of different ways. That's very easy to do, but you can actually still use cloud resources as well with that. So if you're in a world where you're a BizTalk customer and an Azure customer, Atomic Scope's a really good sweet spot for you, and you can go on a journey with both of those. But what we found is that as we talked to customers about Serverless 360, it became very evident that Serverless 360 was about the management and the SLA experience, and customers were still coming along saying, where's my message is one of the problems I have. And it kind of makes sense that they would say that because they're the two real problems. And what we found was that sometimes there was customers telling us their problem was, where's my message? And we were talking to them about Serverless 360 when really Atomic Scope was what they needed. So what we found was that it made a lot of sense to put some of that BAM capability into Serverless 360, because Serverless 360 is really aimed at serverless customers who may or may not have BizTalk. So we wanted to give that option where customers at both ends of that spectrum can take part in the BAM ecosystem. So with that in mind, the team worked really hard and kind of embedded Atomic Scope within Serverless 360. So what's really great though is when I first got the demo of it and we started playing around with it, it was really good that the BizTalk version has a little bit more of setup because obviously you're on servers and there's a few more things to do. But the Serverless 360 version of it, it's just there from straight away. You just start using it, which is really kind of gets you to solving the problem quickly. I'm going to do a really quick BAM in 5 minutes demo, but I want to talk about the scenarios. So I'm just going to really show you kind of what's in the portal, I think. So you start off in this business processes area. Now, if you're thinking back in BAM world, in BizTalk, old school BizTalk, you had this big activity about having to define what your business process was and get it really nailed up front before you could really start using it. And it was quite a significant investment. And I think a lot of the times the reason customers sometimes didn't use BAM in BizTalk was they couldn't understand how to get the business process right. Whereas we're thinking a bit more in terms of like end-to-end tracking and telemetry, which makes it easier to define the business process. Because what we're doing here, if I think of, if I add a new one, really we've got three concepts really. So we've got the business process, which I'll call Mike's business process. And then under a business process, we've got some transactions. So a transaction could be a group of things that execute somewhere. It could be one logic app, something like that. It's really kind of almost an activity in a way. And the transaction, so let's say under Mike's business process, we've got Mike updates SQL, might be one of my transactions. If I save that, and then under a transaction, I add stages to the transaction. So one stage could be a logic app, and I could just call this logic app 1. I can define properties if I want to. So for example, I could say logic app has, maybe an order ID or something like that. And I could have another stage which may be in the same logic app, maybe in a different one. And what I would do is, kind of the telemetry data coming in will just map to these stages in the business process. And I can do things like if let's say I've got two transactions, I can do a correlation between the two. So I can pass a correlation ID, which will make these transactions in the visualization start merging together. So that behind the scenes is how you start building a business process. And we'll look at this a bit more in a moment. But what we also have, the second part of it is how to send your data to Serverless 360. So over in, so let me have a look, over in my, which one's got it? The most popular products we'll use. So over in my Logic app, I can basically start adding these shapes. You can see here we've got a shape called Start Activity, and you'll just see these once you've kind of connected. So there's basically a key in the background of Serverless 360 that you register, and that'll mean that under the custom connectors you'll start seeing our BAM connectors appear that you'll be able to use within your Logic app, making it really easy to start connecting the two. And what I would do is I'd basically start an activity. I can pass a message body in and have it be saved if I want to. I can pass some header properties if I want to, particularly the correlation ID is one example, but I can pass other things like, customer ID, product number, something like that. And really what I'm doing is I'm mapping the activity to the stages in the, to the business process, the transaction, and the stages. And then when that executes, that'll send the telemetry to Serverless 360 and it'll get recorded in the BAM area. Now, what I'll do is I'm going to next just show a couple of real examples of this. So we're going to start off with most popular products that we looked at before, which I've kind of started showing you anyway. So remember from the last demo, this was the one that refreshed the front page of the website. So we had a recurring nightly trigger. It cleans the collection, adds the new products, and then it ends, and we've got like a new list of our most popular products. So if we go into that in Serverless 360 here, so most popular products. This is quite a simple example really. So you can see I've got one business process, one transaction, multiple stages. This happens to be implemented in a single orchestration. So those stages are just parts of the orchestration that I've got to, so I know how far I've got through it. And really what I'm doing is they're not necessarily in any order here, but when I map them from the orchestration and the execution of the Logic app, you'll see I've got a start activity. I'll update the started stage to be successful. Then I'll do the clean products bit here. So I'll pass in the activity ID. When I've done a couple more actions, I'll say, right, clean products was successful. So I looped through everything, deleted them all out. And that basically works through that process. And then at the end, what you'll find is when I've defined my business process, I'll just open up the Composite app. So in most popular products, what I can do in the BAM section is I can define, manage the business process, so I can indicate which business processes relate to this composite application, and there could be one, there could be many. And what I can do is I can just go and do a search, so probably have to go back a little bit further than a couple of hours, but you can see there's the last one that ran last night, and I can see a nice easy visualization to show how it went through each stage. Now, if I think back to the real world, away from the unicorn demos, I remember one of my university customers used to have a use case with the library where it would send a list of students to the library system every day, and that would work great. And then every time it went down, it would be the library team would be the first to know, and they'd come along and they'd hassle us going, oh, we haven't got our list of students today, so somebody new joined and they can't access the library. And to be fair, those guys were actually the support team for the library system, so they had like a special team for that. And what we could do with something like Serverless 360, I could just give them access to this app, give them access to the BAM bit, and let them see how far it ran through. And they could, don't bother calling me, just check yourself. Show you 5 minutes how to check it. And there's even options in with Serverless 360 and BAM to be able to have messages reprocessed. So if they saw it was a problem they recognized, they could just reprocess the message themselves, and they never need to hassle anybody on the Azure team, which I think is a really good place to be. If we also think I've got to, so I think what I might do, I might just skip the next. I'll tell you about the next one, but just fluff over it quite quickly, I think, because I know we're near lunchtime. So the next one's about high-value customers, and what I found is that when I was doing my, I get my orders coming in, and I was thinking, well, if in the real world, if I was a customer who'd spent a lot of money, I might have a VIP team who keeps an eye on those orders. And what would be quite cool is if I could build something, because out of the box there wasn't really anything there, but I know I get order updates, and I know they have the lifetime spend of a customer on them. So I thought, well, okay, let's say every customer who spent more than £50, I might have the VIP team keeps an eye on their order to make sure it's done and they get a great experience. So the logic app that deals with that. Now, this one's an interesting one. I've deliberately done this logic app in a slightly different way to some of the other demos, because I think it's a good discussion point I'll just bring up anyway. So all of the other demos, you probably noticed I put things onto Service Bus and I had little transactions off the back of them. So it might go, something would go and update the Power App, something else would go and update the BI database and stuff. And I think that's a really good way to do it nowadays. But that way there is a little bit more like we would do a typical BizTalk app, where we might do quite a few things in an orchestration. So there I've got a message comes in and I go and update the Power App, then I write something to Teams, and then I do something on the database, and I might do a whole bunch of actions. And I think there's a really good architecture discussion today to say what's the kind of best way to do it. Do I do Service Bus with lots of little decomposed elements? Do I do one big logic app that has a load of stuff in? The benefits of that one are you can see the end-to-end process a little bit easier because it's all in one logic app. But by the time you put things like error handling and all that kind of things in, the logic app gets really complicated and probably that bit harder to manage. Whereas the smaller ones, they only do one thing, so they're a lot simpler, but you then kind of lose the visibility of the end-to-end process. So in that scenario, I think my preference is the smaller ones. I think it fits better with the principles of a microservice architecture, as small, easily changeable things are a good thing. But this is where BAM can come in again, because having a BAM layer on top of it means you can start bringing these things together still for a visualization, even though they're physically decomposed. Now, if we think about an example of that, what I've got here is a product update scenario. So here I get a product update message comes in, and off Service Bus, I've actually got about 7 or 8 things that do different stuff with it, but the diagram's really just one thing. And the diagram's just got 3 of them on, and what I've got is product update goes to Teams and SQL just to tell people there's been a change, and record it in the BI bit for my reporting. I've then started building a Cosmos database. I was chatting with a guy earlier about, he's asking why I wasn't using Cosmos, and I do actually have it in there. I wasn't showing it in the demos this week, but I've started building a collection of orders and products in Cosmos, because I think it's really easy with a big complex data set to sort of query it in Cosmos. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, which might sound a bit funny in a way, but actually just the ability to have those powerful queries might give me some other ideas later on. So I've got one thing that updates Cosmos, then I've got another that just keeps a list of products in the Power App. Now, what you'll notice here is this fits the second model I was talking about, where it's decomposed. The product update comes in, there's a number of things happen. How do I know they all worked? And so if we overlay BAM on top of it, what I could do is the outer dotted line, this red dotted line here, that could define a business process called product update. And then inside that, we could have each of these could be their own transaction, and they could execute on their own, and we could kind of bring that together. So what I did yesterday, so Saravana did the demo on earlier in the week, and his demo of BAM was better than my demo. So I thought, right, if I'm doing the deep dive, I need a bit of a better demo than what I was. So thanks to Saravana, I had to do a bit more work. But so if we think of the business process, so the order update process, this one's, I've tried to keep it simple so it's easy to understand, but there's a little bit more to it. So we've got 2 transactions this time. We've got the Cosmos update one. We've got the price change monitoring. So I think I might have mentioned earlier about how I've got something that looks for product updates where the price has changed, and it does a notification to tell me that they've changed. So they're my two transactions in this business process. Now, they might be in different composite apps, and actually I know they are. So we go to the composite apps over here. Cosmos database sync is over here. I don't think I've necessarily wired them up yet, but we'll have a look. I could put what the business process in there. I could also put it in the other one. But what I did just to make it easier, I put a product update app in. It doesn't have any resources yet, but it's just an easy way of seeing the BAM bit. So what I could do, let me just go into Shopify actually, and so let's say I pick this product here, and I'm just gonna update the description by adding some spaces. So that save of the product is going to trigger a product update webhook to fire, which will send me some messages. And what I should be able to do is in this product updates bit, if I go back, let's say go back the last 6 hours, I'll start seeing some data coming in here. So 4 hours ago, so if we give it a minute or two for it to fully update. But what you'll notice from the data from earlier is I've got a correlation ID going across these transactions. So you can see I've got a few price changes and a few Cosmos DB updates. There's a 3-minute delay on the queue reading, so that'd be why it takes a while to come through. But the key thing is you can see that I can correlate those different transactions together, so I can very easily see which ones were part of the same business process. And I can put some additional properties in as well, so I can maybe search by order ID or something like that. And then I can go in and, so if we look at the price change, you can see my logic app started. Now this product had a collection of variants with individual prices, so I've got multiple price saved events, one for each variant. And likewise, if I look at the Cosmos DB update, you can see that one's a very simple one where I can just see, it came in, it started, it updated the database, job done. Now, what's interesting is that can, the way I've done that means as I add more stuff to the product update, I'll come up with another crazy idea and I'll take the message off the topic again, do another logic app or do a function or something like that, and I can just add another transaction to the business process, and the business process just gets that bit bigger and bigger each time. But the support team, they only really need to know how to look after that business process. They can go in and they can go, right, well, we know we've had a problem with this, look for the ID, find it, look at the business process, which of the 10 transactions might not have worked, go and troubleshoot that. And we're all, it's all about zeroing in on where the part of the problem is, and they might go, well, we just fix it because we resume it, we ignore it, we escalate it to the team, but it's kind of just getting to the real problem straight away. So I'll try starting to wrap this up a little bit now, because I know we're starting to eat into lunchtime. So looking past, hopefully that gives you guys a bit more on BAM. I think maybe a couple of bits I could have talked a bit more about are things like the alerts based on BAM processes. So for example, I was a high value customer, I might trigger an alert for it. There's also things like logging of the messages if you wanted to. You can capture exceptions in there if you wanted to. So some quite rich features I didn't talk about, but hopefully that inspires people of what the art of the possible is. And if you want to learn a bit more about that, you can come and chat later on. I did a lot of the demos with logic apps, but one thing to note is the data sources for BAM aren't just logic apps. So it's an API that we call under the hood. It can receive from queues as well. We can call it from logic apps, functions. You could do stuff in an API management policy if you want. You can do stuff in custom code. So there's lots of ways of hooking into this, which hopefully means it's quite open for a lot of your Azure use cases. I'd say there's even things like we might have features we don't necessarily support as an entity in Serverless 360 out of the box, but you could still get it to send a BAM message. And I think we've got something where we just call it like undefined component, isn't it, as the type in it, but you can still get a message into BAM from a custom component of some kind. So the key message for wrapping up then, if we think about the key features to democratize support. So in Serverless 360, we've got composite applications, which will let you visualize your estate, understand what fits where, and start demystifying this big box of stuff. I'd argue, Saravana said serverless is kind of a replacement to the Azure portal in a way. I think a good analogy is if you think of the Azure portal's just like, sometimes it's like looking at your kid's massive bucket of Lego full of bits of services all over. What we're trying to do is put these things into a logical thing that you can manage and make sense of. And that's through composite applications, the tree view. How can I visualize how the app works? So that comes back to the topology diagram / service map. We've got things like activities. So if you want to securely perform operations like cleaning queues, that kind of thing, we can do that through the activities we've got. And it's all about doing it without giving the support person too many privileges. So I might want them to clean a queue, but I'm very cautious that I don't want them to go and accidentally create a VM or something like that. So we're giving them just the things that they need. We've got the monitoring area, so we can do stuff beyond just what the Azure monitor does out the box, so we can get a bit more focused on the business use rather than just the technical, is the service running scenarios. BAM lets me troubleshoot individual transactions, so the old where's my message scenario, that's exactly what that's targeted at. And the last one is our governance and audit module is all about least privilege access, audit who did what, making sure we're ticking all the boxes. And this was one of the strongest features in BizTalk 360. Customers need that same level of knowledge when it comes to, especially under things like today's tight security regulations that we all have to deal with. That's really key. And I think a lot of people sometimes forget about that, is knowing who did what, when, and why. And so with that, just like to thank you guys for listening. Sorry I went into lunch a little bit, and just invite any questions, or come to the booth and come and talk to us there if you'd like as well. But thanks.
Covey.co